Good morning. Monday morning. Monday morning with Matt. Thanks for coming in. It's a bit of a gloomy morning out there right now. It's certainly become autumn pretty quickly. It is October 5th, and we are 4 weeks and a day away from Election Day. Hope you have made your plans. Just a reminder, as always, that there's still the option to vote by mail. Votespa.com to still register. There's still time to register, or tell somebody you know that there is time to register, and to submit for mail-in ballots, which should be arriving in mailboxes any day now if you've already requested them. They were sent out last week. Also, there's been success. I know at least one person who has gone to the courthouse, to voter services, has applied for a mail-in ballot live, filled it out while there, and submitted it. So if you haven't gotten around to submitting online yet, you could go into the courthouse in Crawford County or in Erie County, and you can vote in person early, so you can have that taken care of. And as always, please share everything that you can about this candidacy and this campaign, so people can be informed voters between now and November 3rd, because it's all happening all at once. So today, what I want to talk about is rural Pennsylvania. It's where we are. Just going to put this up here so it's out of the way. A little shiny mat head here. We'll just move that. We're in rural Pennsylvania, and one of the things that we want to think about is, what does that mean? Or what does that seem to mean? I think is another issue. It's not always exactly what it is, but the way people believe it to be. So there are definitely issues that affect us in rural Pennsylvania, but sometimes it seems like the politics of rural Pennsylvania aren't necessarily consistent with the issues that we actually have. So we need a little vent up here on our barn. And I think ultimately we'll draw a little farmhouse here too. So the first thing that I want to point out, or talk about a little bit, is growing up. So I grew up on a 100-acre farm in Indiana County, which is a county almost identical to Crawford County in so many ways. They're categorized the same by the state in the categories of counties. It's a college town with a rural county with an industrial past. Where I grew up, it was coal. Up here, it's industry, and more recently gas. There's also a lot of natural gas up there. And so I grew up as a member and actually past president of 4-H. And so 4-H, see if I can draw these clover as well. All right, there's the 4-leaf clover of 4-H, which has a nice little slogan that we used to have to say at the beginning of each meeting. I pledge my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to greater service, and my health to better living. For my club, my community, my country, and my world. So to me, that's a really interesting slogan if we think about it. And that slogan and 4-H and the principles of 4-H are consistent with what so many people believe in rural America. And I would say what so many people believe in America. And so much of what this campaign is about using our head, the clearer thinking, to think about the issues that actually affect us in Crawford County, which is simultaneously a small city, a rural, and a suburban district. Our heart to greater loyalty. And I think that loyalty is like the last line, to our community. That's the loyalty we're talking about. Hands to service. What are we doing to help others, which I think is the greatest calling of a public servant. A legislator is called to be serving with their hands for the community, and our health to better living. And you can recognize some of these are central to the campaign itself. So 4-H, the idea was that you met and you showed your animals at the fair. I showed goats. I also raised pigs. And you learned a lot of commitment, but you also learned how to work together. But somehow in rural Pennsylvania, different issues have taken over. And so we'll draw a dividing line over here. And some of these terms that we've started to hear over the last decade or so are flyover states, or Pennsyltucky. That's one you've probably heard. And in fact, there was unfortunately a Democratic organizer that described Pennsylvania as two cities with a lot of Alabama in between, which I've always found is insulting both to Pennsylvanians and to Alabamians, because it's making some assumptions about the stereotypes of what rural Pennsylvania is, and it's casting them out. And then lately, we talk about it as Trump country, or we are talked about as Trump country, or red, just sort of red. And so, a lot of what we need to acknowledge is that we are none of these things. We need to reject all of that. And part of this campaign, and part of what's been exciting about this campaign, is the number of people who also recognize that they are not captured in that sort of descriptor of rural America. Because that descriptor relies on some pretty negative identity politics that wind up hurting us and others. And so when we have a politics that's based on that sort of false rurality, the idea that being from rural country means that the only thing you can care about is a backward look, we've got a problem. So the issues, what we need to think about here in sort of the rolling hills of Pennsylvania, the first one, which I think if you talk to people and actually go out and talk to them, the greatest issue that faces us in a rural county is broadband. And broadband in a serious way. And I just want to take a moment to talk about that, because we all know it. You know it whether you're living in Meadville or not in Meadville, out in the rural areas. You know you're paying a lot of money for broadband that actually is not very fast. And if you go outside of Meadville, your cell service drops. And if you're living there, it's likely you can't get broadband. You've got a slow DSL that's more or less dial up service, or you have satellite service, which is also very slow with caps and expensive. So we're paying a lot of money for being underserved in broadband. And broadband for rural Pennsylvania is a game changer for agriculture, because when you're out on one of the newer pieces of equipment, we're just going to draw a tractor here, right? A lot of them have a little antenna, and they're connected and are GIS linked, which really helps them out on the bigger farms. And so they need access to broadband or high speed cell service so they can do their work. And so there's the agricultural GIS service. There's also the fact that a lot of the market that you're looking for is accessed through the computer, and you need to get on. Commodity prices are changing frequently in order to, that kind of looks like Darth Vader in a certain way, but it's actually supposed to be a computer. But rural broadband is absolutely vital for access to markets. It's a game changer also for rural healthcare and telemedicine. We've seen that recently, that because of health concerns, there's been an option through the emergency declarations that if you talk to physicians and administrators of hospital systems in Pennsylvania, will say they're glad that they still have, because it frees up their ability to do things like telemedicine and also to move patients around if they need to. So if you want to do telemedicine but you don't have broadband, you've got a problem. You can't do it. We face a physician shortage in rural Pennsylvania and all across rural America. Broadband would help have that access to healthcare. And then, of course, education. We all are experiencing that who have kids or are educators ourselves, is that without a true high speed broadband, how are you supposed to do online education? When you're trying to keep your family safe and you have a couple of people there, it's going to collapse pretty quickly. And then the last one I'll throw in is uh, may I don't know how to put this, to like, well, telework. We'll just put it up as telework. There's an opportunity that we have for telework. More and more companies, Erie Insurance was in the news a while ago, has moved primarily to telework for the duration for an undefined amount of time because they recognize it saves money for the company and is better for the employees. But if you don't have access to the broadband, you're not able to do the telework. Now, here's the thing. The incumbent in this race, Brad Roy, is the chair of the Consumer Affairs Committee, which deals with broadband. And he'll keep talking about they put forward bills that will help with broadband. And I am appreciative that bills are coming forward, but most of them are, well, all of them are linked to some idea of profit and a partnership with industry. Therefore, broadband doesn't happen unless there's a profit incentive for the company running them. So, one of them that was recently passed, the rural electric cooperatives that have poles, if this bill would pass, would be allowed to use those poles to run fiber or what have you to houses on those existing poles, which would have access. I'm not super enthusiastic about such bills because of the massive limitations. Because I know my own parents, drawing their farm in some way here, who live at the end of the road, if they wanted to have a cable run out to their house, which isn't very far, sort of the next door neighbor that's a quarter mile away has broadband, but they don't. It's $13,000. And that's not something that the company would pay. The company's happy to run the cable to their house, but they would be on the hook for the cost of running the lines. So we have to go back and think about the rural electrification project. And this was under, I have to stop, electrification, almost left that F out. Underneath FDR and part of the New Deal, there was this recognition that so many farms and rural people across the United States didn't have access to electricity and also even the fixtures for electricity in their homes, that we needed a massive public works effort through the New Deal that ran the lines and also brought the workers. I'll just draw a happy worker here with this will be their toolkit. Hi, I'm here to install your electric. They would come in and they installed electric lights and sockets inside the houses as well. And so the combination of this was, first of all, a massive investment in electrification that brought electricity to farms. And also, because it was part of the New Deal, so this was the win win of it, it created work. It was a work project for the workers who were installing it. So you have a double boost to the economy, that it puts people to work doing highly skilled labor, and it brings a commodity, or not a commodity, it brings a utility. I'm going to write that up here. Utility is everything. It brings a utility to the farms. This is what we need with broadband, and we haven't been bold enough yet. And as always, I think the state doesn't need to just wait around for the federal government to do it, because the federal government hasn't shown the ability to do it. I think Pennsylvania can push for this themselves. In 2014, as an example, and this was under Barack Obama, there was in the Farm Bill a pretty significant $10 million a year for 4 years pilot program for rural broadband. But that's a drop in the bucket. This is the issue. Just like $13,000 to run the lines to a house, these sorts of numbers are a drop in the bucket. And that's why we haven't seen much happen. We've seen further sort of small scale issues or small scale projects to expand rural broadband. The idea is, if we think about broadband as a utility, because again, all of this stuff over here is transformational. Transformational for rural places like northwestern Pennsylvania if we had access to high-speed broadband as universally as possible. We have to think of this as a utility that isn't a commodity for profit, but needs public investment. We should be pushing, as legislators in Harrisburg, we should be pushing the federal government for assistance, and we should be thinking about how to commit our own dollars to doing that, not just to allow the commodities to be expanded, to allow incentives for cell phone companies or existing telecom companies to offer broadband that we pay for, but to actually find a public way to do it. There's all sorts of things like this we need to think about in rural Pennsylvania. This one is a big one. One last one I want to talk about in the last couple of minutes is sort of just the whole idea of agriculture itself and how agriculture faces problems that are linked to some of the other problems. So this is a field, and we have deer. This is be a very detailed deer here, the stick figure deer. Two of the main problems facing our farmers. I think I just drew that, and you can't see that. So we'll just I'll move so you can see that. It might be too far away. There it almost is. I'll have to draw it again. Deer. I'll just put it up here. Sorry about that. It was a beautiful deer. I'll draw it again so you can see how gorgeous the deer is that I drew. Deer. So deer are, as we know, a tremendous impact on crops. And so one of the things that a farm needs to do, and a small scale vegetable farm, this is somebody I was talking to who has it, has to spend significant amounts of money running fencing around their crops in order to prevent deer damage. This is another thing where I think we need some public investment if we really want to help out agriculture and revitalize agriculture, because this is a relatively inexpensive and non-invasive way to prevent massive crop loss, because just as the vegetables are coming in, the deer come out and eat 40-50% of the product. The other thing that we need to recognize is that climate change is creating significant impact to agriculture right now. So these are big issues that affect us in rural Pennsylvania. And there are places like, well, in rural Pennsylvania, climate change isn't something we think of or other people think of as mattering. But the sort of rainstorms that we have, and then even more of a difficulty for farmers, are the changing patterns where it warms up earlier in the spring. So the crops start to bud out, or the orchards in particular start to bud out, and then you get a frost, and it kills all of your still developing crop. Frost damage is one of the largest impacts to agriculture, to food agriculture in the United States now, which is a big change over pests. So we need to think about these big issues, that the social issues, the narrow and not properly nuanced discussions about identity politics actually have very little to do with the things that would actually help rural Pennsylvania and help places like northwestern Pennsylvania move forward and rewrite their story for a different and better future. So yeah, we are in a rural area, and we need to think about how that doesn't mean there's an inevitable way to vote. That we have to consider the people who are running and how much they're going to think about the issues that face us. When you're comparing the two candidates this year, if you look at the platforms, I think you'll see my platform has some ideas and a mustache. The other platform is sort of that old thinking of a few identity politics issues with really nothing to offer the advancement of the rural area. We need to think differently about who we are, and we need to think differently about who's representing us. I hope on November 3rd, I am one of the people that you think can help out and represent you better in Harrisburg. If you're so inclined, throw up a link there. Thanks for coming in this morning. I hope your week is off to a good start. Remember, just about 4 weeks to the election. Make sure you have your plans to vote and all of that. Have a good one. Bye.